again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection Show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Welcome to Author Roundup. My name is Emma, and I will be your host for today's episode. Today, I have with me self-published author, Dr. Brian Lippincott. Dr. Lippincott is a clinical psychologist and marriage family therapist who has had a private practice for the past 40 years. He is also a professor at National University. His book is called Analytical Psychology and Family Systems. Hi, Doctor. How are you today? Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So your book was published in December of last year, correct? So it's very new,
Correct.
fresh.
Yeah.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, um, I've always thought I'm was trained as a Jungian, as a in Jungian psychology, which is a depth psychology, and Carl Jung was really good at uh, intrapsychic things, what's going on inside of a person. So I'm depressed, or I'm having nightmares, or things that are going inside of a person's head. We call that the intrapsychic. But he was actually, I felt, all these years, pretty weak at interpersonal
Mm.
things. I mean, his own, marriage and his own things that he did. He had trouble with that, and his psychology didn't really deal with the interpersonal things. But being a family therapist, I'm dealing with whole families and extended families in the room, and dealing with a lot of different relationship issues that have to do with outer things. And also, I've worked in community mental health for 30 years. So I'm working with people that aren't maybe the most, they don't have as much money as other people. They're on, help, and they need help. And so they have a lot of relationship problems and social problems. So this, I've always wanted to integrate those two things because I felt like family therapists like Virginia Satir and Marie Bowen and all the narrative therapists, they're really good at dealing with outer problems that you have, but they're not so good about dealing with what's going on inside of your head. So I wanted to integrate. That's why analytical psychology, analyzing what's going on inside in your dreams and
Mhm.
your hopes and your
Yeah.
worries, and also dealing with the interpersonal things.
Okay.
Um, and I'm trained in flow science by Kotler and all the famous flow scientists. Which flow is that what athletes get. I'm also a sports psychologist at University of Nevada since my son went there in 2007,
Mhm.
and he set a record with Colin Kaepernick, who's famous quarterback who knelt down and that kind of thing,
Mhm.
who was my
Yeah.
son's roommate. And I started working with the
Oh,
team way back then because they would ask me to hypnotize them before the game, and about different things to relax them. So
whoa.
I would do that. So I was really trained and interested in the flow state. So that's why the subtitle is um, Neo-Jungian Practice to Help Families Find Flow. So it's
Mhm.
help families get into like our families are so cut off. I mean, parents are working in California and Silicon Valley, and where I've been all my life. They're working on 60 hours a week, both parents, and they have so the kids are being taken care of. There's a lot of money flowing in, but there's not a lot of time, and
Yeah.
and they're cut off. So I want to help families kind of work together and be more of a unit.
Mhm.
So that's why I wrote this book. Is my students would always this book is actually like my lectures I've been giving for 30 years to help my
Yeah.
students along the way. And they always wanted a book, so they kept asking for it. And I felt like,
Oh.
wow, now I'm a little older. I don't have to work as much, but I have all this energy, so I put my energy, and so the actual writing of the book took 5 years of my
Mhm.
time, but it took 40 years to live the experiences that are in
Yeah,
there.
and now
Yeah.
you got it, the book. Yeah. And so you mentioned the title of your book. It's very, timely and powerful. What inspired the title of your book, and what do you hope parents feel or understand the moment they see it or pick it up to read it?
Okay. Well, it's the part of the original impetus is really personal.
Mhm.
My daughter is an as a marriage family therapist.
Okay.
She's 37 now, but when she started in 2011 with her master's program, where I was teaching, and she got licensed in 2019. Now, in that time, she had five children, but
Mm.
only three births. She had two sets of boy-girl twins, and
Mhm.
my youngest grandson is on the spectrum. So during that time she was able to get licensed, get her 3,000 hours, go to training, all that, with all that going on. And I saw basically what she went through, and how women in our culture, um, when I had three kids with my spouse, and she basically took care of the kids, and I was able to work. But my
Mhm.
daughter, women have their trajectories of growth in the field sometimes altered because of having children, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
interpersonal relationship issues. So partly knowing her experience, it said, well, I said to myself, well, I've really got to write this down, because a lot of people are, and I just see so many clients with that have the
Mhm.
same story, that
Yeah.
our world is so fast, and
Mhm.
and with AI and all this other things, it's becoming even faster paced.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like we're
True.
on an accelerating rate, but the human body was evolved to deal with a much slower pace of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
True.
so
Yeah.
we're not in sync with ourselves and with our families. So I really wanted to help with that.
hmm Okay. And so things like teen screen time and or even just screen time in general, parental burnout, rising rates of youth distress are all part of this, picture. How do you see these issues connecting within the family system and causing, such a concern?
Well, there's okay. The core and yeah, of any family is that uh, are the parents and the couple relationship. If that is solid,
Mhm.
but many times the parents aren't able to really connect, so therefore they're not there for the kids in the same way, and it's a whole systemic issue. That's so family systems looks at the interrelationships between the people, and if the parents aren't cohesive, sometimes a big problem we have with families is triangulation.
Mm,
So if the parents aren't getting along and they start arguing, then sometimes, let's say I have a 12-year-old, that's when they start smoking weed, or that's when they
yeah.
start having joining a gang or whatever they're going to get into. But it's really the unconsciously, not on purpose, the kids are kind of doing this to kind of hold the family together. So if
hmm
I'm having trouble, all of a sudden, mom and dad will have to come together to save the children. Don't consciously think this. This is an unconscious process. So
hmm
that triangle is really, really important, and that's what I wanted to kind of depict in the book,
Yeah.
and explain to my students, really, and therapists, and pastoral counselors. And also just anybody that's really interested in helping their family, grandparents, all that. I wanted to
hmm
write a book for them to help provide kind of as you can see, I'm putting my hands, kind of a container, a safe
Yeah.
place, a safe egg,
hmm
for the family to grow in that has support. And we're cut off on that level too. Like grandparents live hundreds of miles away and now Zoom the kids, once a week
Yeah.
versus when I was growing up, my grandparents were right there. We visited my grandma every week. And
hmm
even, the average family in the United States now moves every 2 years.
That's
For instance,
crazy.
in the 50s, when I grew up, there was a lady, Mrs. McGillicuddy, who lived next door, but she lived next door to my family for 20 years.
hmm
So, I used to go over to her house at 5 years old and get cookies. And then at 15, I told her the first time I ever kissed a girl. When I came home from college, I visited because we stayed in the same place.
Yeah.
Now there's so much and people have to do that because of the economy and the all the other things we're dealing with. The
hmm
stressors on families are growing exponentially.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, the big thing, uh, um, principals worried about was kids chewing gum and putting them under the desk, smoking in the bathroom. Oh, that was the worst. Nowadays,
Now it's way
when I
bigger.
go to schools, the most of schools I go to have metal detectors. They have,
Mhm.
campus police in high schools now.
Yeah.
My granddaughter goes to Capitola High School in Santa Cruz, and they have all these things. So the worries and the stress of going to even to school as a community thing are way different nowadays. So
Mhm.
that makes communication difficult within a family.
Yeah. And you mentioned a psychologist, Carl Jung, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he's your book brings together, his psychology, like you mentioned, and family system theory, and you mentioned flow science. What made you want to integrate these approaches rather than rely on one framework?
Oh, okay. That's a great story. My students have always told me, Dr. Lippincott, you teach us these theories, and then the next class, you deconstruct all these theories and tell all the weaknesses of them. So my students, 20 years ago, came up with this image of making a Swiss cheese sandwich. If
Mm,
you're making a Swiss cheese sandwich, it has all those holes in it. If you can't put just two pieces of bread and the Swiss cheese if the holes are in the same place. You got to get a Swiss cheese
hmm
that has different holes to fill up a full sandwich. So
hmm
I thought, okay, Jung is really, really helpful at dealing with people with their anxieties and their depression and the visions
hmm
that they're having and other problems, sleeping and all that, internal problems, but he wasn't good at other things dealing with that interpersonal. So I said to myself, okay, I've got one good piece of Swiss cheese that I've learned. I need to learn a lot of other things to fill in the holes, the gaps,
hmm
because when my students have to take tests or go to job interviews, I always teach them you got to have at least you have to be bilingual when it comes to psychological theories if you want to be a psychologist, because you
hmm
got to be able to fit those things together because when you graduate, I know you're all going to have all these student loans. If Johnny's wetting the bed, I need to deal with that. If the parents are having trouble, I need to deal with that. Because I'm going to see all the kind of clients. Now, as you get into the field, like 20 years or whatever, you start to specialize. But in the beginning, you got to deal with a lot of different problems.
hmm
And also, when you're working in community mental health, um, Emma, what happens is that you get clients assigned to you. There's no, oh, I'm
hmm
not a fit for you or whatever. You have to take it. So you have to learn to deal with a variety of different problems. So you
hmm
need a kind of repertoire of theories.
hmm
And so as they've evolved, you know, um, Jungian theory was, the basic bedrock. And then family systems, I studied with Virginia Satir, Murray Bowen, all the people that I write about in my book. Um, I went and studied with them
hmm
for 25 years and was able to apply that. And then in the last 10, 15 years since working with athletes and learning about the flow state, I saw, wow, that's really a healing aspect if you can get the family. Because there's really in the United States, our children have, and our parents too have we have ADHD, attention deficit disorder, but a lot of times I believe that's nature deficit disorder. Kids
hmm
aren't going out in nature. Nature
Yeah,
is so healing. And I would when
true.
I worked at a first episode for 25 years, I ran the first episode psychosis program, 16 to 25-year-olds. That's the first time that youth will really have a psychotic break. Is that and I worked with that age group with the whole team. And what they would say is, and this was in Salinas, California, which we have Big Sur, Carmel. We have this beautiful nature all around the kids in East Salinas hadn't even been out. Well, I would take 18-year-olds out and we would go to the beach in Carmel and watch the sunset. And they say, wow, I've never seen a sunset because they've lived in the city the whole time. They've had
Oh.
things they've never been, and they've never had anybody drive them the 30 miles to do that. So I saw just how nature is so healing, and we have a
Yeah.
lot of holes like that in our life, like we're losing connection with our spirituality. The greatest amount of Americans now, the box they check for religion is spiritual but not religious. So we're
Hmm.
not attending certain, we're not doing those kind of things. So we're not connecting with the higher power. We're not connecting with nature. And so I wanted to find a way to help. The flow state is really good for that. And if you get people that a really bonding thing, if you ever notice when you like why when I was a child, when we would take a part, we were interested in a person, we would take them to a scary movie because that would kind of bring people together when they kind of felt that fear. Or when you go to
Hmm.
an amusement park, when you go off the thing, you'll hug each other at the end because it's like, wow, we survived the tidal wave or whatever the
Hmm.
thing is. That kind of those kind of exciting states are healing for people, and they bring people together in a deeper, more unconscious way, not
Hmm.
just sitting in a room talking about things. So
Yeah.
I have kind of created a more active therapy. That's where the flow science comes in.
Hmm. And so, are there any books like this out there, or rather, what makes your book unique?
Yes, well, I think there's books on all these separate subjects.
Hmm.
Like you can,
Yeah.
collected works of Csikszentmihalyi, who is the inventor of flow science like 30 years ago. It's like a huge volume set. You see what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
it's all
Yeah.
in books. There's separate books on Jung, a whole library on that, and there's separate a whole degrees and things like family therapists and clinical psychologists and social
Hmm.
workers get different training. So
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of um, synthesize and integrate those things together in a whole so that we would have more of a complete psychology to work with, especially in working with families, youth,
Hmm.
couples, that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Okay. And so you mentioned, when you were had these like sessions that you were dealing with extensive family even. So multi-generational patterns are a major theme in your book. How do unresolved issues from previous generations show up in today's parenting and relationships?
Oh, well, right now I'm teaching a class in trauma theory. And
Mm,
so intergenerational trauma is a real way that happens. In fact,
yeah.
one of my students completed he's a Jewish young man, and he just completed his dissertation where he studied the great grandchildren of people that have been through the Holocaust.
Mm,
So
interesting.
even though they had never met their great grandparents,
Right. Yeah.
he did all this research and testing on them and found out that still within their psyche they were holding on to this pain from that didn't really come from them. It was
Hmm.
like a burden a legacy burden that they were carrying. Or I work with a lot of African American people that have they never met those actual people nowadays, but people that were actual slaves. That's part of their history, and also going through the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the oppression that certain groups have, even though they never we now in our lives now in 2026 didn't really experience that. We're still carrying that burden with
Hmm.
us. And now it's being sometimes there will be events like things that are happening right now that kind of
Yeah.
bring that back up for people. Those
Yeah.
those and people don't always know to go back, and psychologists don't always know to go. They go
Yeah.
back through your history of your life, but we don't realize how past lives, our legacies of
That's
our
crazy.
ancestors are carried through to us,
Hmm.
and the pain and suffering that they went through, it kind of trickles down.
Trickles down.
Also, I'm really interested in stopping that process. I've had so many clients that say, I was abused as a child. I don't want to pass that on to how do I stop this pattern? I'm getting angry at my child, or I'm getting really anxious about what's going on with my child, and they don't want to pass that down.
Hmm.
Also, parents, I have noticed over the years, for instance, if I was abused or had trauma at 10,
Hmm.
I'm pretty good with my kid, but when they get to that same age, then I start to re-experience my trauma through my child, and that causes
Oh,
negative interaction. Or if I was abused at 4, when that child reaches 4, I start to, because I'm empathizing with my child, I'm starting to re-experience my own trauma, but I don't know what the cause of it is. I don't
yeah.
realize it comes from what happened to me. So I would say, answer your question, intergenerational trauma is one thing. Also, we have cultural, social processes. Like right now, a lot of people are worried about losing their jobs from AI, even though it hasn't happened to them yet. That kind of social pressure or other economic pressures can be there for
Mm-hmm.
people in the outer world right now that also trigger intergenerational past things that have
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so for parents or couples, what is one insight from the book that like could immediately change how they relate to one another and their family dynamic?
Oh, I think that's a great question. Um, the key thing, that's where the flow state comes in. That's
Mm-hmm.
why even simple things like having rituals, like, and I don't mean rituals necessarily like, but we're not going to church. We're not going to different meet outer things anymore. So we're
Yeah.
losing that connection.
Yeah.
So, I mean the simple things that we don't do, like having a meal every day with your family. I tell couples like this is a healthy. People aren't doing this. This is a
Oh
healthy
my
couple.
gosh.
You have at
Yeah.
least 20 minutes as a couple every day to talk. Okay, you have at
Yeah.
least 1 hour a week where you go out just as a couple and you have a dinner or something together with your partner.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Every 3 months, you go at least for a weekend. So you're getting away from everybody, which means we don't have the extended
Oh.
family anymore to watch the kids. People, how many couples do I deal with? Almost zero are able to do that. Even though that's like the minimum amount of energy, because the couple is
Yeah.
actually like another person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a child in the sense that you have to put as much energy into the
Energy.
couple as you put into your work,
For
into
sure.
your kids. But we prioritize all these other things. So one of the techniques that I would do is with the whole family is a values test where they would rate all these things like their family, their work, having fun, reading, or whatever it is. They would list all the things that are really valuable to them, and then we would kind of analyze. Oh, How much are you really doing this? Okay, this is your top. You have family as number one,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you're spending six. When we analyze your life, you're doing your daily life. You're putting 60 hours a week into work and you're exercising 10 hours a week, but you're actually spending time sitting with the kid and really relating to them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, for instance, the National Institute of Drug Abuse 10 years ago did research that found that the average 15-year-old gets 15 minutes of meaningful dialogue with an adult per
15
week,
minutes.
per week, per
Oh
week.
my
15
God.
minutes per week. Okay. And a lot of that is, Dad, can I borrow the car? That kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Okay. So,
that's
so just
crazy.
by increasing that, like, so if you think about it, Emma, if the average is 15 minutes, that means every kid that gets 30 minutes, somebody gets zero.
Hmm.
Right? So that's why we need therapists so much because it used to be that naturally we had Mrs. McGillicuddy next door, the neighbors, you were in this small community and you were more connected. Now we don't have, so we have to structure that. So
Yeah.
I think, and flow has a lot to do with recovery too. Flow, you just don't get into that state. You have to put some work ahead.
Yeah.
Like you have to say, Emma, we're going to have a family meeting once a week for 30 minutes, where we're going to, and then,
Huh,
you
yeah.
go through, there might be a struggle. Young Emma might say, no, I don't want to go to the meeting. And no, I have to say, yes, we have to do this. And I have to make it fun. And then,
Hmm.
then we get into flow.
Yeah.
And then we need to recover. Need to have these soft times with
Mm-hmm.
our kids, where we're just sitting there, not watching a screen together, but
Yes.
sitting there talking, or laying on a beach together, or just relaxing, praying together if that's what you are into, or doing other things together that are really drawing us. Like, let's go for a walk. Emma, if you don't want to go for a thing, let's go for a walk for 15 minutes in the park and get out in nature,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, nowadays, like being present is like extremely important. Like you mentioned, like 15 minutes of like an actual quality conversation and quality time is important. And you can still be there, like physically in a room with, your family. But if you're not present, meaning if you're on your phone or your phone's right next to you, then that's not really being present. And that's, I feel like, what a lot of people probably struggle with. And, that's super hard, but it's important, right?
Yes. Yes. And like one of the most important things to answer your question you just asked about a technique that would help is
Yeah.
we need to create healthy boundaries.
Yes.
Okay. Like if I do a lot of home visits in my work where I actually go to people's homes, some people you'll walk in
Mm-hmm.
and uh all the doors are closed, and I
Mm-hmm.
you go around, and the parent or whoever introduces me to everybody. I open the door and say each person has their own like machine or two machines that they're on the tablet, or
Oh
each
my
person
God.
is in alone in their room.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, sometimes you have families that are more chaotic, that have there's no doors. All the doors are open and everybody's running around and nobody's interconnecting. And so both of those are two extremes that we want to kind of bring to the middle, where we have good boundaries, where
Mm-hmm.
you have your privacy. You're a 16-year-old girl. I'm not walking into your room and telling you, ordering you around. We have a
Yeah.
connection. But yet, on the other hand, there is some boundaries in the family to keep everybody safe and connected. And there needs to
Yeah.
be a hierarchy. So many times I find parents want to be the good, the sweet parent that oh yeah, Emma, you can go out, you can do this and that, and there's no boundaries, right? And then
Yeah. Right.
sometimes you have over authoritarian parents where it's like the Great Santini or whatever. If you've ever seen that movie, the really authoritarian parents. We don't want laissez-faire parents that just let everything go, but we
Yeah.
don't want authoritarian parents. We want authoritative parents. We want the metaphor I use is I want parents to be reference librarians. So I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm saying, come
Ah.
talk to me. Emma, what was going on? Oh, you could go here, or this is something you might want to look at, or this, I'm giving suggestions, and I'm an authority, but not because I'm authoritarian.
Oh, I
You
love
see what I'm
that.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm somebody
Yeah.
to go to for help, but I'm guiding you. It's your life, but I'm
Yeah.
guiding you on that. Not that I'm telling you what to do, or I'm not just saying, oh, Emma, you're great, you're wonderful. Just go ahead. Just go out at 12 o'clock at night or whatever. It's like my grandma said, if you're out after midnight, you're not doing anything right, or
That you need
whatever.
to be doing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
she also said, if there's anything you can't tell me about, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yes. No,
So
no
we want to
secrets.
open that communication there.
Yes. Yeah.
But we have to have
Great.
time to do that.
Yeah. So another thing is teen mental health, is a huge concern today. What are some early signs parents can look for when a teen is struggling emotionally?
Oh, well, we're starting really young. We want to look at the key thing is their attachment.
Hmm.
Every country, almost every industrialized country in the world gives like a year of time of bonding and most of the European countries give it for both parents. Where now we have laws that say, but our economic system is so stressful right now that
Hmm.
people won't take their time. And so first I would start as back as far as you can go. Now, as a psychologist and in writing this book, a lot of times people don't get that help early on. Like I'm a big advocate for premarital counseling
Mm.
because sometimes the best premarital counseling is don't do it. This is not but that doesn't happen. We don't get counseling along the way. So partly is I have found with families and with kids, with everybody, you have to make number one, the therapy has to be useful. You
Mm.
have to be making progress where the clients feel that they're getting helped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the therapist has to, if you look at, there's 500 different theories of psychology,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And they all work with some people, but the key thing is that the client has to, you have to fit the therapy to the client. That's partly why I synthesized these different ones. Some people really want to come and talk about their dreams. Some
Mm-hmm.
people need to say, I need help right now with how I'm dealing with my daughter or whatever. You see
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? So we need
Yeah.
to tailor the therapy towards what the client's needs are. And that is so we can't be wedded to our theory. We have to have a variety, we have to have different things in our bag of tricks, so to speak, as therapists to bring out, or as even parents, we need to have different things. Sometimes there might be things going on where I really need to set a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for instance, adolescent substance abuse is a thing. Sometimes we have, because for instance, I work a lot with athletes because of the flow state, and I've
Mm-hmm.
had so many parents come in and say, "Oh, Dr. Lippincott, I found some whiskey underneath my son's bed, but he's a big time football player. He's 16. He's a big time football player. Oh, don't all the kids doing that? So as far as substances, the parents don't even know where the line is."
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for instance, historically, the two cultures that had almost no substance abuse had really well defined lines and those were Orthodox Judaism and the Native American cultures before we came and did what we did as
Mm-hmm.
Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
They used, but the key things like in Native American culture, you might use peyote or other chemicals,
Mm-hmm.
ayahuasca, different things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Indigenous people use, but there were strict rules. Like for
Mm-hmm.
instance, when people are getting into psychedelic therapy. If they're into
Yeah.
that, when you go on an ayahuasca trip, you have to um fast for weeks before. You have to prepare for it, and it's a whole ritualized process, right? It's not like, oh, I got out on Saturday night and I'm doing it for partying. So
Mm-hmm.
but the point I'm making is the parents nowadays, we don't know where the line is on
Yeah.
on
Right.
sex. We don't know where the line is on alcohol and drugs.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where and if our culture doesn't have lines then and boundaries, then we can't pass that on to our kids. So things,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the most difficult things that I've dealt with as a therapist is like substances are an example with adolescents. The most brightest, the most physically fit, the leaders of your community, those people in high school try drugs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And alcohol, let's just say drugs as an example. But they're able to get away without getting caught. If somebody's not that smart, you're not doing that, you're not that physically fit, you're going to start having problems way earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Our best and our brightest youth go down so much farther on addiction or other sexuality problems or these other problems. They go farther down it because nobody notices that they're having a problem because they're so high functioning. So
Yeah.
one of the hardest things for me is I've seen it's the best and the brightest that develop the most mental health problems because they're able to get through this
Yeah.
without people noticing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Emma's doing great. She's getting straight A's. I keep
Yeah.
using
No
the
one knows
example,
what's underneath.
there's no problem
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but and for instance,
Yeah.
my daughter went
Mm-hmm.
to UC Santa Barbara and they sent maybe this was like 20 years ago. They sent us parents all letters saying uh, what the letter said was 5% of our students have a prescription for Adderall at the time or ADHD medicine, stimulants.
Mm-hmm.
And they're provided, but 80% of our students during finals week are using stimulants so that 5% is not using it all the time. They're giving it to the other one. So they had a real problem with um, drugs that help you function better. Like the
Mm-hmm.
Adderall will make you do better on tests. You can set up all night and study, all that kind of stuff. But causing a problem, you see, on the other
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
But we don't know. And that's so it impacts the biggest universities, our best places of learning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the other reasons why I'm touching my heart, because that's what I'm really in this, is that our best and the brightest go down the road in the wrong way farther before somebody realizes that. So we want to have more communication and connection earlier on so we can start to notice these things earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Early intervention is like my grandson who's on the spectrum. My daughter was able to identify within the first year. Oh, he's a little dip, and then partly it was easier because we had a boy-girl twin, and the one was totally advanced. And
Yeah.
oh, he's not talking yet, but Indy is really talking a lot here, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
um, he was able to get into UCLA, and the early intervention in the first year. Now by five, he's doing much better than he
Hmm.
was because of the early. So we want to kind of, I'm really on a mission to get early intervention.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting, there's primary prevention, which is where we start early and we teach people about in kindergarten, like in substance abuse prevention. In kindergarten, you don't talk about drugs. What you talk about, you show a kid climbing up a ladder. Is this safe or unsafe? In kindergarten, what they want to distinct. You want to help, but there's curriculums that go all the way through where you
Yeah.
know through the whole life cycle of the kid to kind of teach
Yeah.
them about that. And we need to kind of have more of that education out there in order to prevent things earlier. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes working with 16, that's why I really loved working with 16 to 25-year-olds, and I kind of specialized in that because that's
Mm-hmm.
when a person's I'm doing like this because I'm envisioning a crystal. That's when a person's personality really crystallizes. So
Mm-hmm.
at 16, they're starting to develop into what we might call a borderline personality or a narcissistic personality or histrionic, all these labels, which we don't need, but they're starting to develop this. And there's Emma, the word solution has two meanings to it. It's like a solution to a math problem. 47 is the answer. That's the answer to the math problem. But
Mm-hmm.
solution, I don't know if you've ever made rock candy, but rock candy, you get sugar and you boil the sugar in water and you stir it up and the sugar dissolves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you put the a string in it and it reforms. Okay. So that's
Mm-hmm.
it, and it crystallizes. So when we're dealing with a 16-year-old, we don't want this negative personality pattern to crystallize because by 25, it's going to be crystallized. It's going to be really hard
Developed.
to
Yeah.
stir. Now, a solution also means you have to keep like a couple that's having trouble. They need to keep working on their couple. It's not like I'm going to give you some magic answer in 10 sessions of therapy and that's good, but
Yeah.
I'm going to teach you how to keep stirring it, how to
Mm-hmm.
keep the relationship in solution by
Mm-hmm.
putting constant energy into it. That's why we have 20 minutes a day where you dialogue with each other. Once a week you go out for a lunch or a dinner or a breakfast or whatever to that kind of thing. All the steps of communication to keep it in solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that the therapist is going to give you an answer. They're going to teach you the skills and realize and help you realize what your skills that naturally come from your culture and your upbringing and your history to keep things in solution.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And we're kind of
Okay.
cheerleaders too, to keep people to cheer them on to keep it in solution.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I didn't think about that as far as, a teenager that, is super excellent in many ways, like grades and sports. And I feel like maybe sometimes parents think like, oh, he's fine. He doesn't need that extra time. As far as my other kids need more attention. But then you're saying that that's not true and that we still, it's the kids that are doing so well have more of a mental health struggle.
Yes, many times because it goes farther down the road. And we parents, I'm not really a behaviorist, but
Hmm.
one of the things that I have to be somewhat behavioral because many times, and I'm not being judgmental about this, but
Right.
parents reinforce the wrong things.
Mm,
Okay,
okay.
like I have two kids over there and they get into a scuffle. The
Yeah.
one that's being more aggressive, I'm going to say, Johnny, you're being, okay, get over here with me. And I give the attention to the one who's being aggressive.
Right.
I
Yeah.
should go to the other one and say, Sally, come over here and talk to me.
Yes.
What did you do that trigger? Well, how did you get that? What are you going to do next time? I'm going to give more attention. You see, I want to
Yeah.
change that pattern because
Yeah.
if I keep giving Johnny negative attention, well, negative attention is better than no attention,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I want to change it around. I want to give the attention to the one who needs it, to coach the one who's kind of the more passive one in the situation on
Yes.
how to
That makes sense.
predict. Oh, did you see? Johnny lost the big game last. What could you have done different? How like and you just situations like that. We are therapists are a lot of times coaches. We're not
Mm-hmm.
really giving an answer. We're coaching the client to come up with their own answer
Yeah.
from their own unconscious.
Reference
Yeah.
librarian.
Yeah, reference librarians, exactly.
So when did you start writing your book and how long did it take you to complete your book?
Okay, well, um, it took 40 years of life to get to the point, and
Oh,
I
that's right. Okay.
all the
Yeah.
things in my book were lectures
Okay.
that I gave to my students during that
Mm-hmm.
time. I was constantly teaching also. And so I would do, and students would ask questions, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of was an evolutionary process because they kind of revised it.
Yeah.
They said, wow, this part, explain this more. This doesn't make sense. So I kind of got beta readers before I ever wrote anything in my
Mm-hmm.
students in verbally what I would say. And then we got to the point where I was able to record my things and kind of feed it back to myself. But actually, I started, now it's 6 years but I started, it took 5 years to write the book. I had to collect all the research. But it took all the time I had to read for 40 years. But once I got it all together, then it took 5 years to put it into the right thing. And then I had to go through editing, as you know, as a book specialist.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get people to read it. I had to try different parts out with my students and get feedback. Um, so it was a 5 year process of actually
Mm-hmm.
creating the book, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I just want to say, books, I really support books. Books, return on investment. If you think about it, it took me 5 years to write that book, and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take probably 10 hours to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you got 5 years of my hard work and 40 years of my experience. Where if you read a blog, it might take me to write a blog. It might take me 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
but you read it in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not you get actually more return on investment you're getting more of my knowledge or anybody's. Not books are the greatest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Lectures, I'm going to give a 90-minute or 60-minute lecture to my students. Well, that takes me maybe an hour or two to prepare. And you see, so you're not getting the same return on investment. A book is the greatest return of knowledge
True.
you're getting so much more work by the author in a book because they're putting it all together and they're
Mm-hmm.
synthesizing. Where an academic article, like I published recently in New York Young Institute's journal, it's called Quadrant. I published an article about the flow state and families in there.
Mm-hmm.
That took me about 2 months to write that, but it might take a half hour for you to read. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
an article, even an academic article, has less return on investment than a book. So there's so much
Mm-hmm.
research, and I had to,
So
you
true.
have to read 1,000 books to write one book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And
it's yeah.
so this was your first book then?
This was I wrote a dissertation when
Okay.
I got up, which is like a book, but
Yes.
I had a lot of support in that. This is my first book. Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. How did it feel getting your book for the first time and in the mail? Was it like, it was just
Oh
like
yes, it was an exciting it was like wow, I cried, because it
yeah.
was like wow, I put so
Emotional, yeah.
cause just all the hours because it was like 4 hours a day for 5 years.
Yeah.
When I was raising my kids and my family, when I was running programs of of social workers and counselors with 20 staff and 150 youth coming. And I didn't have the time to devote it. So as I got older, I started saying, I got to write this down, and
Hmm.
as you get older, you get this thing of like, I want to pass on the wisdom. And my students would tell me, like, Dr. Lippincott, you're so helpful. We need to get more. You need to write this down,
Oh, that's
And so I
great.
got encouragement along the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what's been the nicest feedback or review you've received about your book?
Oh, on Amazon, actually, I got
Oh, nice.
um, um, several people that said, "Oh, I picked this book up because I'm a graduate student and it really was helpful to me." Or family members have, or other psychologists are saying, "Oh, I'm going to start to integrate some of this into
Hmm.
my practice." And
That's
the
great.
reviews have been really strong. And what they really talk about a lot is the integration of different theories that haven't been put together. Each like flow science has been around 10, 15 years and doing a lot of research on that.
Hmm.
Uh, Jung, was from the early 20th century
Hmm.
on, a lot of family therapy started coming in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and in the 90s, narrative therapy came and feminist family therapy came. But those things were kind of siloed. In academia, you have these silos, like the family therapist don't talk to the depth psychologist, don't talk to the sports psychologist. You see what I'm saying? So I'm trying to
Hmm.
integrate all the different
Love it.
aspects that I have pulled together that have helped me be successful, and I just want to pass it on.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to a writer working on their first book?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I would say first, write about what you know.
Yeah,
Would be
that's a good
good.
one.
That's a whole thing. And then I would say, as far as just start keeping a journal, just start writing down all your thoughts. You want to, because um, my book is long. It's like 400 pages of writing and then other references. Um, but so I would say start writing littler things first and kind of test those waters. And then I would really encourage, see, I had built-in beta readers. I
Okay.
would write lectures and I would write down the lecture and pass. These are my lecture notes. And I would always say to my students, you're going to get a better grade by critiquing and looking for weaknesses. If you can look for weaknesses in
Hmm.
my work, that means you're really reading it and thinking about it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and I would encourage criticism. It's like, I don't want to get political, but if you think about a family or a country, if you have the leader of the family, the leaders like the parents, and
Hmm.
they're only getting what we call positive feedback. Oh, Emma, you're doing wonderful. You're doing great. You're doing great. You see how, feedback, if I'm trying to hit a target, and
Hmm.
I go, or like the better metaphor is I'm the Buddha and the people are coming down the road. Well, some of them start going off the path to the right, and I say, go to the left, go to the left. Well, these other ones start, no, no, go to the right, go to the right. You got to keep in that middle zone. So um, my advice would be to get a lot of feedback because if you keep getting, like in our country right now, if you only have people that are sycophants that are saying you're doing good, you see how you go off course.
Hmm.
Abraham Lincoln had what in his cabinet, he had what he called the team of rivals. In other words, Lincoln on purpose picked, I want all these people that disagree with me and that disagree with
Right.
each other. I want to have this whole team of rivals that are really, really,
Hmm.
because I want to get the best thing.
Yeah.
If I only
Hmm.
get people, so we want to really, and just in our children too, we want to encourage like, what would you like to have different about this family? What would you like to do? We want negative feedback, but it's hard to take. So I was in a position as a professor where, and after people would have me for a class or two, they would realize, oh, Brian really wants feedback. And so it's a built-in beta testing system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And so, so if listeners could take away one guiding principle for strengthening their family relationships, what would you want that to be?
Oh, okay. Well, the first thing would be would be touch, would be connecting with each other. And that doesn't,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean, it can mean physical touch, but it means touching somebody's soul. And,
Mm.
so really, having like you come home from school and I say, Emma, how were you? How was school today? What was happening? And I know your friends. How's Sally doing with this and that thing she was
Yes.
dealing with? I'm talking about what you want to talk about, but I'm connecting with you. That touching and
Mhm.
in flow science, they've studied um, birds. Birds, how do birds as a group stay in a flock and go together? Okay. Well, there'll be certain birds that there has to be a leader. And then
Mhm.
there has to be alignment. So I have to look at all the birds next to me and stay the same proximity. I don't want to get too close to the other birds like the blue angels
Mhm.
flying through. They have to keep their proximity close. There has to
Mhm.
be cohesion. So if this bird moves a little bit more closer to me, he's looking at me. I have to move a little bit to the left. We have to have a cohesive, which means we have to be following the same North Star.
Correct.
So the
Yeah.
short answer is every family needs to have a North Star that they have. This is the core value of our family, whether it's
Mhm.
love or affection or caring or it's learning. This is a learning of, and you can have several of those, but you have to have those core values
Yeah.
there that the whole family buys into.
Mhm.
Yes. And so
That's
that
great.
means the parents have to role model that.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom would always say, not just love, but unconditional love.
Yes.
She loves us unconditionally, and I always love that. That always like stuck with me, and that's what I want to do for my kids too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's not based on performance.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not based like you have
Exactly.
to get A's or I don't love you.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right. It's like,
what do you
yeah.
want out of school? And I want it, your parent needs to say, what do you want to get out of school? What do you want to do? And we have to have that dream,
Yeah.
and we have to have if I'm your parent, I need to know your dream. If I'm your child, you need to know what my is. And I always tell people, my only superpower is I can see other people's superpowers.
Mm.
I can kind of pick out, like I have people I supervise and they're training to be a psychologist and they want to do testing. And I say, wow, when I see you working with clients through a one-way mirror, you really deal really well with families. In fact, like none of the other people were get the able to, of your colleagues were able to get any of the fathers to come into the session, but you got 80% of your fathers to come in to a
Hmm.
session. How did you do that? And so I noticed her talent in
Hmm.
family therapy, even though the world was pushing her in another direction. So and I think that's just being a good parent too, is every child has a gift,
Hmm.
has an inner angel that's trying, or whatever a self, a true self, but in the future that's pulling them forward towards their true self. And
Hmm.
parents need to be like weavers. In other words, I'm weaving your story here. I have to say, oh, Emma, you're 6 years old, but I see you really love swimming.
Hmm.
I have a vision of you going to the Olympic. I've worked with a lot of Olympic athletes too,
Oh,
and
cool.
all their parents when they get the gold medal or they win the Super Bowl, that kind of stuff, they say, "My mom got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and drove me to this practice. I went to this football camp. I did. My parents sacrificed. They always,
Yes.
you know, and so you want to have that connection to help pull the person forward
Oh, I love
and so
that.
we both, if you and I are going to be a team or a family, then we've got to have the same North Star. We've got to figure out
Hmm.
what that is. What is our most important values?
Hmm.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Lippincott. I love your book. It's very powerful information, and I hope listeners check it out today. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Is there anything else you would wish to mention, or do you have a website where
I
readers
have,
can find
yes,
you? Okay.
yes. My website is Brian Lippincott, PhD, all spelled out, .com.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Yes. And for readers of my book, I'm offering like a free consultation and things like that
Oh,
too. So
nice.
in the
Okay.
back, the very last back of the book is like it talks about my blog
Uh-huh.
and what it's other services they can get or consultations and things like that.
Okay. Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and it's nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet
Yeah.
you too.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you want to purchase Dr. Lippincott's book, you can head to balboapress.com and purchase it through the online bookstore. It's also available on Amazon and Barnes& and Noble. And thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.